Hey everybody, thanks for joining me today. Sorry you haven't seen me in a while, life kind of got in the way for a bit. But I've been working on some cool stuff, you'll see that soon. Today though, I'm going to show you something that's a little different. So first, let me explain to you what I'm showing you today. Many of you probably already know Becca from the So Becca YouTube channel. She put together a really cool project for 2024 where a group of quilters who are all on YouTube are going to be contributing to a collaborative quilt, kind of like a round the world quilt, but in this case, we're each going to be making individual rows that we submit, and then those rows will be combined and quilted at the end. Each person, when they do their row, they're going to post their video, and there will be one of these each month. So this time, it's my turn, and thanks for joining me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit now about what I chose to make as my contribution to this quilt and why, and how I think I'm going to get it done. I want to be clear, as I'm filming this, I have not made it yet. I've finished designing the concept, but I have not actually started sewing it together. So you're going to see with me whether I'm able to execute the design plan that I have in mind. First, I'm going to show you a bit of inspiration. So if you look on the left side of your screen here, I'm showing you a piece of art. This is a mid-century modern sculpture made from bronze that's on a wall in our house. It's fairly new to us, but it's obviously an older piece. It's one of my favorite pieces of art. I just love the way the birds look, and I also really like the shadows that they make on the wall. Makes some really interesting shapes depending on the time of day and where the light's coming from. So lately I've also really been interested in quilt designs that have a gradient to them, shifting from one color to another. I thought it would be kind of cool for a row, since this is 10 by 50, I thought that format might give me a chance to kind of make something that has a gradient from one end to the other, includes some birds as a feature, but on one end, not the whole thing. And what I hope this will look like is a set of birds flying into the sunset, with a sunset effect created by a gradient of colors. You may have seen a previous video I did where I was trying to make a crazy sunset based on a southwestern scene, which came out, okay. Check it out if you haven't seen it. But I'm going to be sort of building on that idea with this row here. One thing I really like about the previous submissions that I've seen from the other members of the group is that they incorporate a lot of color. So I'm trying to kind of build on that. And also I really liked that some of them were pulling in animal themes. So I feel like the birds here kind of play off of the animals that you might see in some of the other submissions as well. So once I decided on the concept of a sunset with birds at one end, and I should say the birds will be silhouettes, not with detail within the birds. Once I decided on that concept, I then had to figure out how I'm going to do the birds. So I thought about a few different ways to do it. The first thing I thought of was laying it out in EQ8 and then using that to create some foundation paper piecing templates. So you can see on the left side of your screen here some of the concepts I did. Some of them were based on tracing out shapes from the photograph of the sculpture. Others were just based on similar kinds of shapes of birds in flight. The thing that I think that's missing is the ability to have the nice curves. The curves that you get from the sculpture, I think are important. And yes, I could probably do curves with foundation paper piecing, but that just seemed like kind of a pain and maybe not the best suited method to be able to achieve that look. So the next thing I did was also using EQ8. I started laying out a set of birds from the sculpture, not all of them, just a subset, and then with the curves included. And the idea is that these become applique templates. So you can see here I've made a set of templates of different shapes of birds that would all come from the photograph from the statue. So I've made those in EQ8, like I said, and then I've printed them and cut them out here, ready to go. So again, I haven't made this yet, but I have made the templates. So that's my plan right now, is to go ahead and do the whole background with a gradient of color, which I'm envisioning, and then take a darker fabric, or maybe even different colors of fabric to make the different birds, and then lay them out just as you see in this photo, which again is an arrangement that's taken from the sculpture that's on the wall. So I haven't made it yet, but this is my plan, and let's see how it goes. I keep my scraps divided into two different bins. I have a small scrap bin and a large scrap bin. So I'm going to start with the small scraps. I don't think I need a lot of size for these particular pieces. You know, I can use a lot of small pieces, and that's fine. One of the things I'm thinking about is I might angle the pieces kind of, you know, the bottom half angled a little to the left and the top half to the right to create kind of a herringbone effect, you know, with the different patterns. Again, it's going to look like a gradient of color going from light to dark, but I think it would be fun. Actually, I'll probably go dark to light. Yeah, we'll do dark on the left-hand side, and we'll go to light on the right-hand side. That way the bird silhouettes can be dark, and they will have good contrast with the end of the row that they're on. So anyways, I think I might try a herringbone thing, but right now I'm really just looking for things that give me kind of a good sunset effect. In the past, I've used things like batiks to create this effect. They're always nice. They usually don't have a ton of busy stuff going on in the print, but they definitely have a lot of color. The things I keep in my small scrap bin kind of range in size. A lot of them are strips like this, kind of jelly roll things or similar. I consider this small because I can't really cut any sort of larger shapes out of them. My larger scraps, that's usually things where I've got a fat quarter or less, but something that's a little wider than this where I can cut a variety of shapes out, probably almost any shape I would need for most quilts. The small scraps includes kind of strips or anything smaller. I do keep, you know, really thin stuff like this, even really tiny stuff. You never know when you might want this. As you can see, I definitely don't organize these. Some people are real particular about organizing their scraps by color or by fabric. I don't bother with that. I just dump it all in the bin. Part of the fun here is finding things that I forgot about. Here it is, half of a hexagon from a One Block Wonder quilt that you may be able to see over there in the corner. This was based on kind of a Starry Night type theme. And this was extra from a skirt that I made for my daughter when she was a lot younger than she is now. This was one that we used in a set of placemats. One year we decided it would be fun to make placemat sets as Christmas gifts, and what I didn't really think about was that we were making sets of 8, and that becomes a lot of binding. Here's a great set of batiks, kind of with yellow and green pastels, and yeah, those will work nicely. Sometimes I have leftover binding here like this. I can always press that back open again and reuse it. So as I was going through the scrap stash, something occurred to me. First, I should explain that my wife has an excellent eye for design, and she almost always comes up with interesting ideas to consider when it comes to designing quilts or anything else. She had suggested the idea of maybe having landscape or mountains across the bottom of the row that's kind of in the foreground of the sky sunset colors that are in the back, which is a cool idea. I just wasn't sure I would have time to do it. One of the things that I noticed as I'm going through the scraps and pulling out colors for the sky is that I'm also finding a lot of greens and browns. So it occurred to me, maybe I could accomplish the look of foreground mountains in a way. If you think about the herringbone sort of diagonal orientation of the color strips for the sky that I was talking about earlier, if the lower section of those tended towards greens and browns while the upper section tended towards the lighter colors for the sky, that would probably accomplish the same kind of effect. And the diagonal orientation and the herringbone would actually introduce some corners which would maybe look like little mountaintops. I'm going to give that a go when we do the arrangement, and we'll see how it looks. This is Sunny. She sometimes has a little trouble not barking at the neighbors, so she's going to join me for this segment. We're going to sort some colors. I got a bunch of stuff out here for small scraps, and that's going to do the job nicely. But I want to make sure I have something that's just right for the background on the right-hand side that's going to look like a sky blue and let the birds really pop. Basically, I have a bunch of nice blues in here. Look at this. I've even got one with clouds. I'm looking for a larger panel on the right end that's going to be behind the birds, that's got the sky blue look, that's nice and light, so the dark, dark bird silhouettes will really stand out. And then I got some of this space fabric. I think it might be fun to start with that one at the left end. All right, I think that's enough to get started. So let's get going with arrangement. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start sorting all these scraps from dark to light. So get them roughly in the order that I think I might want to use them. Darker stuff goes over here and lighter over here. And I think I'm going to probably have darker blues fade into oranges, yellows, and pinks. And then towards the right-hand side, I'll go back out of the warmer colors into the cooler colors again. But in that case, it will be the lighter versions, like what's here. Okay, now I've got everything sorted in roughly the order that I want to use it. I started here with the darker blues, and then that moves into purple, and then the purples that have more red in them, moving into pink. I might move this one over. Moving into the pinks, the oranges, and then this kind of pale, it's almost purple, but it's really light, and then moving into some very light blues. So we go from blue to blue, but also roughly from dark to light, with a few exceptions maybe. The oranges here jump out. I might pull this one out and skip that. I have a few over here that I'm not planning to use. Along the bottom, I've got a bunch of browns and greens, and these are what I'm going to use for the lower section, like we talked about earlier. That'll kind of help make it look like foreground landscape, mountains. And as it turns out, I got a lot of colors in here that sort of look like fall leaf colors, which is kind of cool. So I think that'll work. And then these ones down here are going to be the lighter section that's less busy, and that'll be where the bird silhouettes sit on top of. I've got some paper here. I'm just going to roughly show you what my plan is. So this is a 10 by 50 row, so we're going to draw a rectangle that approximates that. Within this row, I'm going to have the birds down here at this end flying in the pattern that I showed you already. So along here, this is where I'm going to have the gradient of color. So we start with dark, and then it goes to light. I'm going to take the orange and brown, the sort of landscape mountain colors, and I'm going to kind of put them in strips in here, along here, and then for the sky colors, we're going to go this way. And then down here, I'm going to keep it real simple with the lighter colors so that the birds can really stand out. So if I turn it around, you can kind of see what it would look like right side up for you. So again, go from dark to light with the birds on a light background, dark bird silhouettes, and then the sky colors in the top, and then sort of landscape colors in the lower section. I want to show you the sequence of sewing that's going to get us this effect. If we start with something like this that looks like sky, and then if I put a strip of sky fabric on here like this, it's okay if it hangs off the edge, because I'm going to trim the top and bottom edges of these when I'm done. So I don't care what's happening above the top or below the bottom. If I roughly line up here with this line, that makes for less waste, but I can always trim it, so it doesn't really matter. And then after I do that, then I'm going to take a piece of the yellow or brown, something for the foreground, and I'm going to sew that strip right here. And then from there, I will take another piece of the sky fabric and sew that on here. And then another piece of the foreground fabric, sew that on here. Another piece of the sky here, and so on. And you just keep going all the way to the end. You'll wind up with that gradient effect you're looking for from one end to the other. And also what we're going to have here are the foreground colors, these ones on the bottom, creating these peaks here that look a little bit like mountaintops. So I think that might make for a cool look. So that's how I'm going to sew it together. Stay with me here, and let's get started. So I decided to use this fabric as a starting point for the right end of the row. This will be where the birds are. And I've cut it about a few inches extra in terms of the height. The finished height will be 10 inches. I've given myself a couple inches of extra material there, and I can trim it at the end. I've started the chevron shape down here on the left side, as you can see. And when I was pressing it, I noticed it actually has its own similar type of shape in the pattern itself. Let's take a break from sewing for just a minute and talk about measurements. The short answer is I'm not doing any, which is great, but that doesn't really tell the whole story. The nice thing about this kind of quilt construction is that I don't have to do precise measurements. I can make the pieces any shape or size that I want, and I can decide as I go. But it's important to note that when I'm putting it together in this kind of arrangement, the size of the piece does matter because it affects the overall layout. So let's take a closer look. Okay, so I just told you that the size doesn't matter, but that it does affect the layout. So let me explain what I mean by that. If I were to do these alternating rows, alternating strips, all of the same width, the intersection of those would stay in the center, so at a consistent height along the whole row. However, if I do a wider strip, like this one here, what that does is it takes the subsequent strip and makes it need to go further up to meet that end and create a seam or create an edge where I can apply the next strip after that. So on one hand, the width of the strip can be a tool for changing the design and moving the interface between the lower and upper sections up or down. It can also be a detriment because let's say you just want to use a wider piece of fabric and you don't want to move that interface up or down, then you've actually moved it up or you moved it up or moved it down, even maybe when you didn't want to. So if that happens, there's another trick you can do, which is what I've done here. I've actually taken a sky piece of fabric and a ground piece of fabric, and I've joined them end to end to try to bring that interface back down. I like the sky colors better myself, so I want to have more sky than ground, and so I didn't want things creeping up quite this far, or at least not the whole way. So what I've done is combined these two pieces end to end, sewn that on, and in effect what I've done is I've moved the sky ground interface further down into the quilt. So these are ways in which both the size and shape of the piece can be ignored, but it can also be a tool for changing the overall layout, and you have some methods like this for being able to correct that without changing the width if you want to. I want to show you another tool you can use to control the balance of the lower section and the upper section in an arrangement like this. I told you already how a wide strip in the upper section will make the next piece of the lower section extend further up. However, another way to accomplish that same effect without having the look of one wide strip of the same fabric is to combine thinner strips of different fabrics all on one side before you apply a strip for the next section. So when I showed you how I had put these two end to end, what I did after that was I applied a ground strip and then two more ground strips before applying this sky strip. So these ones here are acting like one wide strip of the ground fabric, which makes the next strip of the sky fabric extend much further down. Along the way, I felt like this design needed one more element of visual interest, so I've added in a new technique and I just want to quickly tell you about it. So from here over, all of these seams are for the most part parallel, which means the strips are consistent width from the center all the way out to the edge. But from here over this way, I've started trimming them so that they're tapered, so that they're a little narrower at the center than they are at the edge. And what this is doing is taking the line of these, the lines of these seams and starting to open up that angle so it's heading towards getting to be a straight piece at the end. I've got about 10 or 12 inches to go before I'm done with the length of this row. So I'm going to keep this up, and I think by the time I get to the end it's going to be straight or close to it. The next thing I'm going to do is trim this piece so I can get rid of some of the excess material on the top and the bottom. That'll help me visualize what the finished piece is going to look like a bit more. So I'm not going to take it all the way down to 10 inches. I'm just going to kind of go close. And with this kind of construction, there really is there's no reference point for what's straight and what's not. I just get to pick. So I'm going to use my initial piece that I started with, the blue one, kind of as a guide here. And then, so if I fold it over, that allows it to fit within the length of this ruler. And then I'm going to just make a cut here and another cut here. And that will just bring it in a bit. Not quite down to 10 inches, but getting closer. I am going to line up the ruler so it's perpendicular with this folded edge, and I'm going to consider that folded edge to be straight, to be a reference point for a vertical line in the middle of the row. This is now, as you can see, about 11 3/4, which is fine. I'm going to work with that until we get to the end of the row. Okay, I'm really close to finishing off this row, so let's talk about some design choices. You might notice right here I've repeated this print again here, and I've also added another piece at the end so that now I have a straight line that isn't vertical, it's diagonal, but more gentle than the angle down here. So what I'm doing is beginning to transition into the end. My ending fabric is going to be this blue sort of space theme. That was my plan all along, was to get there. So I'm making sure to use prints that are going to blend into that reasonably well. It's got the blues go with the purple. It's also got these gold stars, and the yellow and the orange in here, tie into the gold well enough that it seems, it's a good enough transition from one to the other. So what I want to do is add more of this print because I just really like this print. I want to get a little more of that in there, but I want to have some separation. So I'm going to add in this purple, which does a couple things. It ties in the purple that we started building here, where it's getting darker and darker, into an even darker purple. Here, the yellow and the yellows in here tie into the gold that's in this, and again, the purple and gold both tie into to this print here, which is more like a charcoal color. We kind of have some continuity in the colors that are happening there. And then lastly, we'll bring in this, and it pops a bit in terms of bringing in more blue, but that's okay. This is going to be a bit of a larger piece to kind of finish out the end of the row, so that's going to stand on its own. But you'll notice that I have a repeat here and I have a repeat here, and that's in part because I am intentionally ending the pattern that I've been doing. So down here, things were real continuous. We started changing the taper here, so that feels like it's kind of starting to introduce new things. The duplicate pieces here and duplicate pieces here, again, it adds another break to the pattern, which helps the transition into the end feel a little more gentle and a little less abrupt. All right, I'm down to adding the last piece here, and you can see that I have a taper here. There's an angle, so it's not vertical, and I need this to line up with it. For all the other pieces, I've just cut them how I think they look nice, put another strip on, and I don't care about the orientation of the fabric. In this case, I have a piece here that I actually want to stay straight, so I need to know what this angle is, and I don't really care to measure it, so I'm going to show you my trick for how to do that, how to know where to cut this so that when I sew it here, it's going to come out straight when I unfold it. I'm going to take the piece I need to trim, and I'm going to put the edge I'm trimming at the top, facing away from me. And this is right side up on this fabric. And then I'm going to take the piece that I'm joining it to, and I'm going to put it on top of it, also right side up. And I should align these however I want the end result to be. What I will do next is take my ruler, and I'm going to put my ruler aligned to the end of the angled piece of fabric. And then I'm going to use that as a template for drawing a chalk line onto the piece that I want to trim. And then when I turn them around this way, and I've trimmed that, and I sew it here, it's going to match up just right. All right, here's the finished background for my row. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it. The finished size right now is 54 by 12, and that's just fine. I'm going to leave that for after the applique is finished. All right, if you're still with me, I certainly appreciate it. With the background done, the next step is for me to do the applique of the birds. And I showed you what those look like in the beginning of the video, and I have my templates here. I have a variety of contrasting and darker fabrics that I think are all good candidates for birds. I'll probably do a mix of colors for the birds. So I'm going to do these as needle turn applique. Wish me luck, and I'll see you soon. So I just told you I was going to do needle turn applique to put these birds on. So I started working with that, and I am feeling like it's not going to give me the effect that I'm looking for. Part of the issue is that some of these segments are really thin, and I just don't think I'm going to be able to get a needle turn result that's going to look as good as I want. And also I don't think it's going to capture these kind of curves and details and points and things. So I'm trying a different approach. I have not done this before, but I'm going to try something new. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these paper templates and I'm going to trim them to have the seam allowance that I want. And then I'm going to glue these right side up onto the right side of the piece of fabric. And then I'm going to cut them out. And then I'm going to do raw edge applique, but I'm going to kind of do it like paper piecing style, where I'm actually going to leave the paper in place, and then I'm going to use the lines here to trace the outside of the bird itself. And I'm going to do it with a thread that's a gold color that I think will contrast some of these darker fabrics. So it's kind of like foundation paper piecing in that I'm leaving the paper in place and I'm sewing over the line to kind of use the line as a way to trace to get the details that I want. And then I'm going to remove the paper when I'm done. So when I glue these on and cut them out, I'll go ahead and trim the fabric piece to have the seam allowance that I want for the raw edge applique. And then the what's left outside of that stitching will be essentially left to fray. I know a lot of folks use fusible to glue things down for raw edge applique. That's not what I want here. I actually want the edges to fray a little bit because I think that might give kind of a look of motion or feathers even. So I'm gonna leave that edge to fray a little bit, and that's okay. So that's my plan. I'm gonna give it a try, and we'll see how that goes. Wish me luck. Let's take a look at the results here. A couple things I'll point out is that as I was sewing around the edges here, with some of these sharp inside points, it was actually easier to do here than doing needle turn applique because I didn't have to dart the edge of the fabric. So essentially what I did when I was sewing this was, when I come down to this point, I'll leave the needle down, lift the presser foot, pivot the fabric around, and then start in the new direction. So I feel like I didn't have too much trouble getting the details and points that I was looking for here, so that's all good. Now I'm going to try peeling back the edge of the fabric, or the paper, sorry, and we'll take a look and see what's underneath. You may have noticed when I was trimming the pieces, I was cutting out the fabric for these, I have the seam allowance printed here on these templates as a 1/4 inch seam allowance with this dotted line. You'll notice this is a little thinner. So what I did was, when I was cutting these out, I just cut a little inside that dotted line. So instead of a 1/4, it's more like 3/16. Just taking a little bit off so that way the extra bit around the outside of the stitching is just a little thinner and a little more appropriately sized for the small scale of this bird feature. This is the basic arrangement I'm going for. I think I will overlap them like that. I think that will be a good look. So we have our first bird in, and I think this method's going to work. All right, it's coming along. We've got 4 birds done. I'm gonna probably use some tweezers to clean up any bits of paper that are left behind, but overall I think it's working out all right. And with that, my submission to the 2024 Traveling Quilt is done. After a little bit of final trimming just to get it down to the precise finished size, it'll be ready to toss in the mail. I hope you had a good time watching this video. I had fun making it. We made a nice big mess, so that's always good. Have fun, take care, and I'll see you on the next one.